All right. Welcome to Street TV. My name's Alex Alonso, and I got an Eric Holder trial update. I'm calling today day 9 of testimony, even though yesterday was day 8 and we didn't get any testimony. But today's day 9, and we had 3 witnesses on the stand. Eric Holder was back in court, even though he was injured, and both sides rested. The prosecution rested their case, and the defense rested their case. I'm going to give you a synopsis of the 3 witnesses that testified. I'll give you a little update on Eric Holder, and then I will jump in this chat and answer some questions. But all right, so the first witness for the prosecution, as we've been stating for the last couple of days, was the coroner Lawrence Nguyen, Nguyen. I have him as the 18th witness. Is that right? Do I have him as the 18th witness? Let me just double check that real quick because they took him out of order. Correct. He was the 18th witness. He technically the 19th witness on this case was Michael Ramirez, who was the paralegal for John McKinney. And for whatever reason that we didn't hear, the coroner was asked to come back. So I have him still as the 18th witness. But in total, the prosecution put on 19 witnesses. So I don't know who you consider the last witness, but the coroner testified last. So let's just go through his testimony really quickly. Lawrence Nguyen actually didn't do the autopsy. And if you've read the grand jury transcripts, you already know that. A guy named Dr. Dutra, he's the one that did the autopsy. And for whatever reason that we do not know, I believe he might not be employed with the LA County Coroner's Office anymore. And that's probably why he's not here to testify. But I can't confirm that. So he said that Nipsey Hussle, actually, while Lawrence Nguyen was on the stand, Nipsey Hussle was not referred to as Nipsey Hussle during testimony. John McKinney referred to him as Mr. Ashkadam. And the coroner is the first witness where Nipsey Hussle, the name, was not used once. And I guess because they had the coroner there, they had a doctor, it was an older gentleman, and he probably doesn't know nothing about Nipsey Hussle. Everything is Mr. Ashkadam. So he sustained 11 total gunshot wounds, and they went through every single wound with diagrams and photos, which we've seen for the very first time. We actually saw autopsy photos of Nipsey Hussle. That shit hit. That shit hit real hard. So sorry about that, people. So the coroner goes through each All right. Give me a minute. I've seen autopsy photos a million times in my life. I got a whole bunch of them on my shelf over there. I got them in binders, but it ain't nothing like seeing autopsy photos of Nip. All right, so the coroner goes through every single gunshot, and I'm not going to go through all the gunshots, but I will tell you that gunshot number 3, they called it number 3, hit a lung. Gunshot 4 hit the same lung, I believe, the right lung. Gunshot 5 actually went into the liver and the lung, and gunshot 5 is the one that severed the spinal cord thoracic area, and that's the one that would have made him paralyzed. The doctor said that it was a T2, T3 upper level of the torso, and that would cause paralysis in the lower extremities. And then wound number 6 would have struck the colon. But there were a total of 11 wounds, and the doctors testified that he would have bled profusely internally, and there was significant bleeding in the chest area, and that there was about 1 liter of blood in the right lung, and it would have caused rapid death. And on cross-examination, the defense attorney asked if Mr. Nguyen had assisted Dr. Dutra. He said no. He said, did you have anything to do with this autopsy? He said no. Have you ever examined Nipsey Hussle's body or Mr. Ashkadam's body? He said never. And after that witness was done, John McKinney said the people of the state of California rest their case. So that was pretty much the end of the case for the prosecution. So now the defense has the case, and it's still the morning time. It's about 10:30, and the defense's first witness is Cowboy. Recalled Cowboy. Cowboy came in. I got to say, Cowboy was looking real sharp. He came in with this white jacket that has all the glitter. I guess we're calling that sequence. I mean, the whole jacket, white glitter. He had a pair of, I think, some red Converse or some red high top canvas shoes, all glittered out. I mean, this dude came in fly. So now the defense attorney is asking questions, because now Cowboy became a witness for the defense. So the defense attorney puts up the video of the parking lot, and he paused the video, and he says, you see Eric Holder walk over to you, Mackenzie, Ashkadam, and then there's another gentleman there, and he had an arrow pointing down at everybody on this graphic. Eric Holder, Cowboy, Nipsey, Evan McKenzie, Rimpaw, and there's another guy there that hasn't been mentioned in this trial at all. And he asked Cowboy, who was that guy? And Cowboy said, well, he was asked, do you know that man? And Cowboy said, not offhand. And then he says, do you see the woman that walked over to the group? And he's talking about Bernita Nicholson. And then Cowboy says, yes. And he says, did you know that this woman was actually with Eric Holder? And Cowboy said no, that he hadn't paid any attention to where she had came from. And then the defense attorney asked, did you tell Miss Bernita Nicholson that to wait before she takes the photo with Nipsey? And he said that he didn't tell her to wait. And he asked, did you hear Mackenzie Rimpaw tell her to wait? And he said no. And then they played the video again and paused it. And it says, does it appear that Ashkadam is signing something for an individual, signing autographs? Cowboy said it appears that way. And he says, do you see the individual that appears to walk away from the group? And then Cowboy says he's not sure what he's talking about. So basically that other person that's not identified, at some point he walks away from the group. And he said, and he asked Cowboy, the guy that you said you don't remember his name, do you see him walk off? And then he says, yeah, he gone. And then during the conversation between between you during the conversation between Eric Holder and Ashkadam. Did you ever hear Ashkadam use the word snitch? And I think that the attorneys are calling Nipsey Hussle Ashkadam more today because they started off with the coroner, and with when you're questioning the coroner, everything's more official. So I noticed that we're hearing Ashkadam more today than we've heard on any other day. So Cowboy says no, and then he asked, "Did you hear Eric Holder use the word snitch?" So Cowboy said no. So basically, at that point, I realized Cowboy saying nobody ever said the word snitch, not Nipsey or Eric Holder. And then he says, "Did you hear Ashkadam say paperwork? You got to watch your back." And Cowboy said, "Nah, not watch your back, but he did mention paperwork." And then the defense attorney said, "Well, let's go to the grand jury transcript, page 61, lines 9 through 16. I think I got that transcript right here. Give me a minute. All right, so we're on page 61 of the grand jury transcript. That would be volume 1. And the defense attorney said, let's look at lines 9 through 16. Did his attitude or demeanor change any after Holder approached the group? Answer: it didn't change really. He just had a conversation, and like Nipsey was more or less trying to look out for the dude, was trying to help him, like basically warning the dude, like, they got paperwork on you. I haven't read the paperwork, but you got to watch your back. Hey, you can't escape something you said 3 years ago, because it's going to be in the transcript. So he just told the defense attorney he didn't tell him to watch his back. So he pulled up page 61, and he did say it. So then he asked him, so you remember, did you say that regarding watch your back? And then Cowboy said yes. And then, did you also say the consequences of snitching could be getting hurt or killed? He said yes. And then he asked, did Nipsey give Holder any circumstances of this case about getting the paperwork? Meaning, did he give him a name, a date, something regarding the case? So when Nipsey Hussle said they got paperwork, Holder responded, "Niggas just be hating on me." Then Cowboy states that, then again, Cowboy says, Nipsey Hussle never said, watch your back. That was me characterizing the conversation. Then he asked, how did Eric Holder respond to all of that? And then he just said, people be hating on me. And then he said, how did Ashkadam respond? Then Cowboy said, that was that. Then Eric Holder started talking about a CD. And then the defense attorney said, well, let's go to the grand jury transcript, page 64. Let's go to line 23. And we're going to read to line 6 of page 65. Okay, now that we clarified that, please continue with what you heard from the point where you left off. Answer. So when he told him, basically that he was kind of looking out for him, telling him to address the paperwork, and then Shitty got to saying, oh yeah, motherfuckers be hating on me. They be hating on me, And then Nip was like, so y'all know what I'm talking about? And he was like, no. People be hating on me. Then he looked and he asked us, had we heard his rap? Have we heard his new song? He said, yeah, I've been in the studio. I did a new song. So apparently he did say a few things grand jury. And then he asked him, so did you give that answer, Cowboy? And he said, yes. And then they play the video some more. And he says, and they pause it. Do you see where you shook Ashkadam's hand? And then Cowboy started saying, this video is so blurry, like he couldn't really see. And then he says, do you see Eric Holder shake your hand? And he says, yes. Do you see Eric Holder walk away without shaking Ashkadam's hand? And then Cowboy says, yes, which I thought was interesting. That's the first time that was brought up during the trial, that when Eric Holder left to go to the Master Burger, after he left that group with Rimpaw and Cowboy and Nip, he shook Rimpaw's hand and he shook Cowboy's hand, but he didn't shake Nipsey's hand. When he arrived, he shook Nipsey's hand, but when he left that conversation, he didn't shake his hand. Then it says here, yeah, do you see Eric Holder walk away for the second time with his food? Cowboy says yes. And then at this point, Carrie pulls up. Do you see Ashkadam is between two white cars? Eric Holder shakes your hand. Eric Holder shakes Rimpaw's hand. And Cowboy says, yes, it appears that way. Then Ashkadam bends down and Eric Holder walks away. So I thought that was real interesting. When he left, Eric Holder, he didn't shake Nipsey's hand. He only shook Cowboy's and Rimpaw's hand. Then the defense attorney wanted to play the whole shooting, that part, but he paused it. He says, the defense attorney says, I know you said you never watched the video, so I'm gonna stop it here out of respect. And then it says, do you see in this still where Mr. Holder returned? And he said, yes, this is when he returns to do the shooting. And then he plays the video a little bit more, and then Cowboy gets a little emotional. He don't want to watch it. And then Cowboy says, I need a break. He tells the court, I need a break. And the judge says, give the man a break. And then the defense attorney says, I just only had one more question. And then defense attorney Jansen says, you know what? I'm actually done. So Cowboy walks out, a little emotional, seeing the video. They took a break. They brought Cowboy back in because they had to do it officially, where the defense said, I had no further questions. Then the prosecutor said, I had no further questions. And that was the end of Cowboy. And then the last witness for the defense was a gang expert named Robert Freeman. And he has 5 years in the Marines. He was an LAPD officer for 2 years, and then he became a private investigator for the last 26 years. And he works for the defense. He's a LA defense attorney investigator. And he gave him a hypothetical. He said, if there's a guy that's from rolling 60s, but he hasn't been on the scene for years, he moved to another city, Long Beach, works in a restaurant. We didn't get much testimony about this, but he did have a job in a restaurant, Eric Holder, has a daughter, has only one felony conviction, and is wearing a red t-shirt. Is it your opinion that guy's an active Rolling 60s member? Now, John McKinney was like, objection, lack of foundation. This man hasn't established himself as an expert on this matter. So then defense attorney Jansen goes back into his background and training. Have you heard of the 60s? Did you ever do any investigations on cases regarding the 60s? He said, I've done a lot of research between 2011 and 2020. How many times have you testified as an expert? He said 6 or 7. And then he goes back into that same hypothetical. You know, if a guy in the 60s that hasn't been around for years, would you consider him inactive? And he said that, in my opinion, he would be inactive. And then why would you say that's your opinion? Because he has not been around for a while. He moved out. He has a job. He hasn't been seen by the police. No FI cards. John McKinney was like, objection. And the judge actually sustained that objection. And he said, you know, limit it to certain topics. So one of them was, Being that Eric Holder was not around for some years, that would be one reason that he would, in his opinion, he wasn't active. Then another one is having a kid. Some gang members kind of, move on when they have a kid. And then his age, being that he was 29 years old, is that a factor? He said yes. And then they wanted to bring up the fact that Eric Holder had a red shirt, make it seem like the colors kind of still mattered. And then there was a lunch break. The defense attorney continued. Let me see. Yeah, and basically he just said after the lunch break, so would a Rolling 60s member know the consequences of being labeled a snitch? He said yes. When you grow up in the community, everyone knows the consequences, and there was nothing further. Then the prosecution cross-examined Robert Freeman, and he said, you mentioned that you was an LAPD officer just only for 2 years. And he said yes. And he asked him, what 2 years was that? He said from 90 to 92. And he says, were you on probation? He said yes. And then he asked him, were you fired? Were you terminated? And he said yes. And they said, well, why didn't you mention that earlier? And I forgot what the response was. but ever since then, he's been a private investigator. So that's 26 years. And then he asked him about, in 26 years of being a private investigator, you've only testified in 6 or 7 cases? And he was like, yes. And really, 6 or 7 cases, that's low. I've been working with defense attorneys for 22 years, since 1990. I have worked on about 650 cases. I have testified in about 110. This expert had testified in 6 or 7, and this guy is not a young person. So, and then he said, is it fair to say, this is John McKinney on cross-examination, is it fair to say you go many years without testifying? And he was like, yeah. And he says, how many cases have you testified involving rolling 60s Crips? And he said, none. So this is the first one? He said, yes. Then he's like, did you know Eric? Have you met Eric Holder? Oh, not Eric Holder. Before this, did you know Eric Holder? No. Have you ever met Nipsey Hussle? No. Do you know Sherman Villanueva? No. Have you ever met Kerry Latham? No. Do you know Cowboy? No. So he's just trying to show that this guy doesn't really have a connection to this gang. And I don't really think that just because you don't know the members, you don't understand the gang culture. This is the way the court. This is the court game right here. Because I've testified on cases regarding gangs that I don't know anybody from that gang. Not one single person, but we're not really there testifying about the gang. We're testifying about the circumstances. Like, for example, they're testifying about snitching, but they want to limit it to snitching within the 60s. But we all know snitching in the 60s and the 40s and the Harlems, and the Blackstones, it's pretty much very similar. But in these courtrooms, they really want to nail you down. Like, if you ain't never testified about snitching in this gang, then you don't know what you're talking about, is the perception. So that was pretty much it. Oh, really interesting. John McKinney found a photograph of a St. Louis red hat that was placed at Nipsey Hussle's memorial. There was an objection to showing that hat. The judge had a sidebar, and then I guess he allowed it. And then John McKinney showed the gang expert this red hat at the memorial, because there was some testimony on direct that, that since Eric Holder was wearing a red shirt, that really meant he wasn't active anymore. So the photo showed the St. Louis Cardinal hat was left at the candle vigil. And he was asked, do you know there's this red St. Louis baseball cap? He said, yeah. And he said, what gang does this hat represent? And he said he couldn't remember. And then the prosecution said, "Isn't it for Black Pea Stones?" And he was like, "Yes." And that was pretty much it for testimony. After the gang expert testified, the defense rested, and the judge told the jury that that was all for testimony, and he excused the jury. And we should be in closing arguments tomorrow morning, Thursday. And I'll speak briefly about Eric Holder because I reported yesterday that he was injured. I first posted an Instagram video yesterday as soon as I got the news that he was attacked. Then I wrote an article about the attack on StreetGangs.com that went up a little bit after midnight. And then today he was in court. And today's the first day that he wore a black COVID mask. And he wore it high, so you really can't see the injuries. But I noticed when he sat down, he had 3 staples going down the backside of his head, a little bit towards the left, and they were going down in a linear fashion. 3 staples right here. So, and we learned, let me just give you an update on the injuries, if I have that. Which I got right here. A little bit of an update on the injuries. If my article has the update, I wrote an article that posted about after midnight that's pretty detailed about the injuries. But let me see if there's anything else that was added to it. One of the things that I learned today regarding the injuries, he was unconscious. They knocked him out. At the time, he wasn't. He was bending down or leaning down trying to get rest, and he got blindsided. So, they sucker punched him, and it was 2 people involved in the attack. I had previously published multiple people because when I asked Jansen yesterday, he wasn't sure, but he confirmed that it was just 2 people that attacked him. And that's pretty much all I got for day 9 of the Eric Holder trial. I'll take some questions, and I'll answer some of the questions that you got. So let's jump in the chat. Sucker punch for a sucker. Sucker punch for a sucker. Do you think the feds will pick up the firearms? Man, sometimes these firearms they're in the dust somewhere. I had a gun stolen from me a few years ago, and I always think that maybe it'll pop up one day, but the reality is I'll probably never see that gun. Eric doesn't have hands. He needs his 2 guns to survive. All right, anybody got some questions? I mean, you guys can comment in here all day long, but I didn't see the super chats that came through while I was reading my notes, so I apologize. But I appreciate and thank anyone that is, took the time to provide a super chat. Did they say anything about the cameras in the Marathon store? I could tell you this. I did an interview for AGTV where I talked about that camera in the Marathon store because the detective did tell me that they tried to get that video. So I'm having lunch in the cafeteria the other day, and I just happened to ask, Cowboy was sitting right there, and I asked Cowboy, what's up with that footage that's in the Marathon store? And he's claiming that the way that the camera system is set up in the Marathon store is that it doesn't record. They have a monitor inside that you can see the cameras and what the cameras are showing, but the DVR is never actually recording or capturing footage. So he said when the police came and they saw that there was no footage, they didn't believe that that's the way their system was. But according to Cowboy, it was just used for monitoring the parking lot, but not for recording. So, that can be completely possible. Was Nip's funeral closed casket due to the injuries? I wasn't inside. I didn't get to go inside the funeral, so I don't know. But I think it's televised. I think there's a big video, so I don't remember. Maurice, thank you. All right. Was it? Oh, I asked a question regarding the assault on Eric Holder. I asked, were the assailants, the two assailants, which they know who it was, were they black or Latino? Um, and he said no comment. So we don't know. Anyone want to opine on who could have attacked him 3 years later? Well, Eric testified. He will absolutely not testify. If you probably just jumped on. The defense rested their case after the gang expert Robert Freeman finished testifying. That was it. That's the end of the case. Someone said here, Duke Jones said it was a closed casket. Bale 733 believes that the two assailants on Eric Holder were Mexican. Did they use his injuries to the jury at this time? No. Machiavelli Mafia. Thank you. Let me see. Your question is, Cowboy said Nip tried to get up after getting shot and didn't say anything. Have you heard any contradicting stories that Nip did try to speak or move after? No, I haven't heard anyone say that Nip said a word. Not at all. But I could tell you what's really interesting. If when you guys get to see the LAPD body footage, body cam footage, you see Shermai Villanueva. They played this video in court. You see Shermai, he's standing there and he's explaining what happened. Of course, he didn't testify to any of this. He said he didn't see who shot. But when he's standing there talking, and a lot of times when you're just standing there talking, that body cam footage is capturing everything. He said that when Eric came back, Eric said, "You're done." And he said, then he started bussing. So there was no information that Nipsey ever said anything after he got shot. Good evening, Ray Poindexter. Are you surprised that none of the family on both sides did not show up? And what are your thoughts about this? Yeah, I'm a little surprised because, I've been in these courtrooms, for years, and there's always some family member, victim's family, the defendant has family. I've seen it where there's family for both sides, and the court has to separate the family when that happens. They got the family to the defendant on one side of the court. They got the family for the victim on the other side of the court. No family in this case. I really don't know what to think about that. I don't want to pass any judgment, but it is a little unusual. Wasn't there some cell phone footage? Yes, there's a witness named Ingrid Caston. She shot some cell phone footage from her car, and she was parked right there where they were standing and talking, and she shot 2 minutes of footage. And this would have happened like moments before, maybe a couple minutes before Eric Holder came back and shot. OG Steve, stupid cuz caught a Rikers Island cut. Hey, that is actually true. When I was a kid, those slice injuries were very common in New York Rikers Island jail. It wasn't something that you ever saw in LA. LA didn't want to slice you, but in New York they slice you on your face. Where Eric got cut, and we don't know the fashion of the cut, but I'm gonna show you right now. His cut was right here, like this, somewhere right here. I'd say about 2 inches long, maybe 1.5 inches, and it had 3 staples, like 1, 2, 3. 3 staples. I'd say about 1 inch, 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inch cut. It's hard to see. His hair is pretty short too, so his hair is short like mine, and you can see the staples. You can see the staples shining, and I was sitting right behind him, so I got a good view of him. Will closing arguments be recorded? And if so, what time, if you know? Yes, closing arguments will be recorded. There'll be a pool reporter with the camera in there shooting. And the closing arguments are going to start tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know what time though. They still have to do jury instructions before the closing arguments. Machiavelli Mafia, have you spoke to any people on the low who support Eric? I'm sure the entire 60s are on Nip's side. Also, have anybody been mentioned about Eric actually being a snitch? Well, I wouldn't say I spoke to people on the low. I mean, there's a lot of people that publicly say that when snitch allegations are brought to you, you know, there's going to be some dudes that do what Eric does, and this happened before. So there's quite a few people that say this is what happens. How much for the podcast studio? Will you be posting videos from the trial when they come out? I'm going to post the closing arguments, and then I'll post the verdict. I should be able to get those. So just like I got the opening arguments, the opening statements for both sides, I posted those up pretty quick too. Will the verdict be read tomorrow? No, there's no way the verdict will be read tomorrow. All day tomorrow is going to be closing arguments. You got to give the jury some time to deliberate. So I don't know if court is going to be open on Friday. There's a good chance that the judge opens up court this Friday because next Monday is a holiday. So I don't know. Whatever happened to Gangster Chronicles? Come on. I'm not going to tell that story again. Who's dissing Street TV? Were any of Eric's relatives killed in retaliation? I think that rumor was unfounded. I don't think any of his relatives were killed. What else is going on? What other questions? The Gangster Chronicles died a few months ago. Johnny Coop, you got me over here laughing. Avante Wright, you came late. Yeah, Cowboy. Before Cowboy had a break, he went into the hallway and looked very emotional. Yeah, once defense attorney Jansen was going to play the actual video of the shooting, Cowboy said, I need a break. He said, I need a break. The judge said, sure. And he walked out. Advanced graphic. Holder was moving slowly when he returned from the break. Do you think Jansen was surprised that Freeman said colors aren't as prevalent as they once were after he tried to establish gang colors? I'm not surprised that he said that because maybe he was surprised that Jansen asked that question. You know, after they made a big deal about Eric Holder had a red shirt on cross examination, John McKinney was like, wait, hold up. Are colors less important in 2019 as they were in the 1990s? And, you know, you got to be honest when you're an expert because you lose all credibility. And he agreed. So I think maybe he was more important that Jansen even asked that question. Is Eric on suicide watch? We have no information about that. Do you have the paperwork for Miko Worldwide? Mental health counselor. I have a little bit of paperwork, but I don't have all of it. I want to get the Alfred plea on that case. Maurice, the immense amount of rage Eric displayed when he kicked Nip, he needs anger management. Hey, man, a lot of these brothers in these streets, they all are angry. They're all angry at somebody. So, all right, let me see. Somebody saying People dissing me. I don't know. If anybody's dissing me, they absolutely have no reason to diss me because I have no issue or no beef with anybody on God's green earth. So I have no idea why anybody is dissing me. So just like these conspiracy theorists that have all these ways of Nipsey's death, try to explain his death in many ways, I call them weirdos. And anyone that's dissing me, they're just as weird as the conspiracy theorists. All right, let's see if we got any good questions here. I was gonna go to the 60 minutes, but if we still got more than 1,000 people in this room, I'll stay. I'll stay for a little bit longer. But I do gotta post a couple of videos. I gotta type up some notes. I gotta make sure I get some good sleep tonight, so I can. I don't want to miss any of the closing statements tomorrow. Was Shitty Eye red? I think his eye was swollen, so I couldn't tell. I'm sitting behind him, so I don't really get a good view of him unless he's walking into the court. And he only walked in a couple times. During the break, they take him out, then they bring him back. So every time he walked in, I was trying to get a good look at his eye, but there's so many distractions. Everybody's trying to talk to me. There's a lot of people in the audience that I know. I'm talking to all the people in the media as well. We got TMZ is there, the LA Times is there, the City News Service is there, Court TV is there, the Final Call is there. I'm missing one or two more. I believe there were 8 media there today. So I really couldn't pay attention to Eric Holder as much as I wanted to. But there will be a photographer in court tomorrow. There will be a photographer in court tomorrow. So boom, he's gonna have that COVID mask on, covering his whole face. So he go get a manslaughter. Watch. Hey, Biddy of Champions says he thinks it's gonna be a manslaughter. Did you ever meet Nip before? Yes, I met Nip. I knew Nip before he blew up. I met Nip in 2007, right there on Slauson. Why isn't it televised? The judge did not allow cameras to record the witnesses. He only allowed cameras for opening statements, closing statements, and the verdict. So it was a compromise. And it's good that he did it, man, because I would hate to this internet, this whole internet thing is all about person A trying to diss person B. And really, with this information that we get on the internet, it should be about education. It should be about advancement. But a lot of this stuff is just about dissing. And trust me, if cameras were in the court and you got to see Cowboy testify on camera, Bernita Nicholson testify on camera, all these weirdos are going to do is dissect it, analyze it, and make jokes out of it. So that's why I didn't allow it in court. The map the cop spoke about a few days ago wiped out the VNGs, but aren't the VNGs would start right across from where the marathon store is? I think the VNGs start around 55, 56th Street, and they go that's south. They go north to about 48th, somewhere between 48th and a little bit past 54th would be VNG hood. But yeah, the gang cop for the LAPD had the 60s going all the way to 48th. Is he in protective custody? I'm not actually sure what his housing is. He's not in general population. Can I sit by you tomorrow? Nah, you can't sit by me because I have a reserved seat, and the reserved seat next to me is taken because I'm in the media row. So Was this a hit on Nipsey? What year did you attend USC? I attended USC from 1993 to 1995 as a student. Then I worked there. I had a job before I graduated from 94. That job took me all the way to 97. And then I was a student again from 97 to about 2004. And my daughter goes there. What is the temperature of the jury at this time? How did they react to the autopsy photo? Man, I wasn't looking at the jury, unfortunately. I was not looking at the jury during the autopsy. I checked them out a couple of times to see if they were falling asleep, and everyone seemed to be very attentive today. But I figured out the jurors that are the main 12 and the ones that are alternates. Let me give you a quick breakdown of the 12 jurors that are going to be deciding this case, because the alternates, they will not be needed, I don't think, unless during deliberations. That happens sometimes. During deliberations, they lose a juror. But in terms of the 12 jurors, there are 5 alternates. There are 12 jurors. 3 are men, 8 are women. So this verdict is going to be decided by 8 women and 3 men. And of those 8 women, 2 are black. Those are the only black jurors out of the 12. 2 females. So 3 men, 8 women. Who said I'm FBI and CIA? Oh my God. Anybody's calling me FBI, CIA. I've been out in LA doing this for a couple decades, and I get mad respect. I don't know what's going on here. FBI, CIA. Did Eric walk in or was he rolled in? No, he walked in. He walked in on his 2 feet, and he had a nice suit on again. I think he's rotating about 4 different suits. I think I identified 4 different suits. And no, he walked in. He looked strong, but he wore a COVID mask to cover up his face so you couldn't see all the injuries. It's the first day that he wore a mask. Oh, okay, Austin. I see what you're saying. Eric is in protective custody. 8 women, 3 men. So let me just give a quick recap of what happened today. I will keep this live up. I haven't figured out how to shoot my lives in 1080. When I connect my DSLR, it always shoots in 720. So that's why I like to just do some videos and post them. But quick wrap up. This was day 9. There were 3 witnesses. The prosecution put on their last witness, which was the coroner. And then after that, prosecutor closed his case. The defense put on 2 witnesses. First put on Cowboy, and then put on his gang expert, Robert Freeman. And then he closed the case. And that was pretty much it. The trial ended in the afternoon. And everyone's ordered back early tomorrow, or earlier, I should say, at 9 a.m. What that hat mean? Y'all crazy. Y'all crazy. Y'all crazy. Y'all crazy. I might stay on for 10 more minutes to make this an even hour, but if we got 1,500 people in here, I'll take some more questions. What made you interested in the high profile case, Alex. That's from Gianni Castro. I've always been interested in the law. I sat in quite a few trials. A lot of the cases aren't as high profile. I sit in other cases too. But also, I work with defense attorneys so closely, so I'm always in the courtroom. So half the time I'm in the courtroom, they think I'm there working, but no, I'm here as a journalist. I'm wearing a different hat today. So not one black man in that jury. That is true. There's not one black man as the part of the 12 or an alternate. Maurice, man, you on fire, Maurice. Now that Eric is going to jail, does that mean Bernita Nicholson is single? Oh my gosh. Do you think the state proved its case? Well, when you ask, did the state prove its case? You're asking, did they prove that Eric Holder shot Nipsey Hussle in a premeditated first degree murder fashion? But you're also asking, did Eric Holder shoot cousin Carrie in a premeditated fashion, and did he shoot Shemai Villanueva in a premeditated? Because he's also charged for 2 first degree attempted murders, and I think we might get a mixed verdict. We're gonna get a mixed verdict. That's my prediction. A mixed verdict. How many trial dates do Eric have? I'm not sure what you mean by that. How many trial dates? What time tomorrow and what floor? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., 9th floor, but I would come early because there's going to be a significant peak of interest in this case because of the closing arguments. In my, history of checking out trials, you see a lot of people in the opening statements and you see a lot of people during the closing arguments. So tomorrow should be a packed courtroom. And thank goodness I got a seat. My seat is reserved. What's your opinion on no one being there on Nip's side? Well, let me tell you how these cases usually go. When there is somebody that has a big name, Nipsey Hussle, Michael Jackson, Oscar Grant, when you have these big names, you usually see a huge presence of at least fans. So, for example, when Michael Jackson, when Conrad Murray went on trial for that Michael Jackson case, 100 people outside every day. Justice for Michael Jackson. When the Oscar Grant case was moved to Los Angeles from Oakland, there were at least 10, 20, 30 people outside the courthouse every day. Justice for Oscar. I was expecting something similar like that for Nip. And there's been absolutely no fan presence, like outside with signs. There has been a few fans showing up in court that I've met, and at least 3 fans that have come to the courtroom are there because I invited them to come through doing these lives. I was expecting a bigger presence from the fan base. I was expecting a bigger presence from the people that knew Nipsey personally, because that's the way it always goes down. That's the way it always is. But we didn't get any of that. So I'm gonna let you guys kind of opine on that to yourselves, why that is. At least, what about the reason why the fan base wasn't there? Justice for Nip outside the courthouse doing what they do for all these other cases. I don't know. Probably the gang element got people uneasy. I was thinking that, but I think most of the fans don't think of Nipsey as a gang member only, So, but yeah, you might be right. Could be the gang element. LA is frivolous. What floor? CV says it's going to be on the 9th floor, 210 West Temple, 9th floor. Be prepared to go through extra security. It sounds like the only person there was Cowboy. Well, Cowboy was there, and there were about maybe two dudes that I saw with Cowboy, but I didn't get a chance to meet them. They were there a couple of days, but Cowboy was pretty much there every day. And I mean every day. Did you see Nip's body? Well, they showed some autopsy photos, and those kind of hit hard. Can you see Shitty's reaction to the autopsy pictures? Couldn't really see his reaction. I mean, in order to really study his reaction to certain things, you got to just stay keyed in on him. And there's too much stuff going on. You got the jury, you got him, you got the prosecutor, you got all the exhibits that are going on the screen, and you're writing notes down. Sometimes I'm typing, so it's pretty difficult to pay attention to all of that. Do you think that Eric getting beat up will affect his case in any way? Well, the jury's not supposed to know. All of this information about Eric getting beat up was discussed in court, was done outside of his presence. In fact, the judge didn't even say anything about beating up on, when was that? That would have been on Tuesday. He just said, due to unforeseen circumstances that are out of the control of the court, I'm going to cancel today. Come back tomorrow morning. That was it. Nothing about what happened to Eric Holder. Oh, you're saying that the jury must have saw his face. I don't think the jury saw his face, because the jury is on the far side against the wall of the courtroom, and Eric Holder is on the opposite side. So where I'm sitting at, I'm closer to Eric Holder, and I can barely see because he's got a mask on. So the jury, which is much farther away, I don't think they were able to see anything. They probably just noticed, oh, he's wearing a COVID mask today. But, if they're on the internet and they're looking, even though the judge tells them don't do it, maybe they know about it or learned about it. Hey, in 1 minute, this I'm gonna be at an hour. I wasn't expecting 1,500 people in the live, but let's go for another 15 minutes. Let's go for another 15. I'll answer some questions. I'll give a quick wrap up. Today was the 9th day of testimony, even though yesterday was the 8th day and there was no testimony. The prosecutor put up their last witness, which was Lawrence Nguyen. And after he testified, the prosecution closed their case. Nguyen represented the 18th, I believe the 18th, was it the 18th witness? Let me get this right for you guys. Yeah, Nguyen was the 18th witness, but remember, it kind of went out of order because on day 7 he was supposed to testify, and then they decided to bring Michael Ramirez, who was the paralegal, who was the 19th witness. So I still have the coroner as the 18th witness, but in total, the prosecution put on 19 witnesses, and then after Lawrence Nguyen testified, the defense had the case. They put up Cowboy. Then he put up the gang expert, Robert Freeman, and then he rested his case. And then the judge excused the jury till Thursday morning. And the judge told the jury, you have heard all the evidence in this case, and they are to come back at 9 a.m. Thursday morning. And that's your day 8 wrap up. I need to be on CNN. I appreciate that. Do they consider Cobby a snitch? I don't know. Was Nipsey on parole at the time of his death? I doubt that very much. I'm trying to get a good question here. Is Miss Nicholson mentally slow? I think that's a pretty good question. And I don't think I will call her mentally slow. I would just call her naive. Not mentally slow. It was very naive, though. How many times was he shot? The coroner said there are 11 bullet injuries. Some of those were through and through. Some of those were not. And if you really want to get a synopsis of the autopsy, you could just read the grand jury transcript. The only difference today was that we got to see photos. We got to see never before seen photos. And and not only did they have photos, but they also had diagrams, autopsy diagrams that went along with the photos to discuss the injuries, the trajectories, and yeah, it was real deep. Cowboy's heart was broken by Nipsey's demise. He and Nip were close. Even after Cowboy's difficulty with drugs, Nip never turned his back on Cowboy. Hey man, let me let you guys know that if there are any conspiracy theorists still left out there questioning the role that Cowboy played, please call them out. Please call them out as being a weirdo, because there is no way on God's green earth that Cowboy had anything to do with this, and we shouldn't be in 2022 with bizarre theories that implicates Cowboy in any way. Can you tell us the locations of the bullet wounds on Nip? I can tell you a few. I just went through it earlier in this video. In fact, once this live is over, whoever asked me that, just go back and watch the first 20 minutes. Just go back and watch the first 20 minutes. I don't want to go through that again. That's a little too much for me. A little bit too much. Which bullet shot caused his death? I would say the three that went in his lung. The three that went in his lung, the coroner testified that there was at least 1 liter of blood inside the right lung. So that you can't breathe. So I don't know if they call that suffocation. But yeah, those bullets to the lung. Avante Wright. Thanks for representing. Greedo says 100% premeditated. Salute to the street journalist. I appreciate that. Anybody from Nip's family there? No, I spoke on that earlier. No one from Nip's family showed up. And Black Sam did an interview with Pat Harvey from KCAL News, or it's now KCAL CBS News. He did this interview in mid-June, and he even said in the interview that he didn't plan on coming to the trial. The white truck and the burgundy truck. How could the driver get those two confused, saying that's where Eric put his chili fries? Intercessor. That's a good question. Let me briefly explain what intercessor is asking. And I have a video on Bernita Nicholson's synopsis of her testimony. I'm not sure if I went into this in detail because I didn't think it was a big deal, but Bernita testified that when Eric Holder got out of the car with his chili cheese fries and his drink, this is right before the shooting, that she sees him walk through the alley and place the chili cheese fries and the cup on a red truck, on the hood of a red truck, and then continues to walk and then shoot Nips. There was a photograph that there was actually a white truck in that alley. So what Intercessor is asking is, how can she get the color of a truck confused? And I really don't think getting the color of a truck confused is all that big. And let me ask you guys, Give me a thumbs up if you think that's a huge inconsistency that she got the color of the truck wrong. She said it was a red truck. Then the photos of the crime scene show it's a white truck. Give me a thumbs up if that's a big inconsistency that she said red and not white, or give me a thumbs down if you think the color of the truck is not a major inconsistency. And I'm gonna tell you why I don't think it's a major inconsistency. And this is what she should have said. If I was a witness, this is what I would have said. Because the crime scene photo of the alley showed the white truck, but the chili cheese fries and the drink were on the ground. So if I believed that the truck was red, I would have stuck to my guns. I saw him put the chili cheese fries and the drink on the top of a red truck. And I'm saying that white truck must have came later. That's a possibility. The red truck, that's why the chili cheese fries and the soda might be on the ground. I'm just giving you, other ways to look at it. I'm not saying that's what happened, but the chili cheese fries were on the ground. The white truck was there, but we don't know how long that white truck was there. The red truck could have left and the white truck could have pulled right in behind it. But I didn't think the inconsistency of the color was all that. I do it all the time. Friend of mine pulls up in a car and he leaves and I'm like, what color was his car? Was it blue? Was it gray? I don't remember, So some of you guys think it is a big inconsistency. Some of you guys don't. So she said it was red. The photo showed that there's a white truck there. But remember, those crime scene photos were taken after the shooting, obviously, maybe 10, 15, 20. Actually, the crime scene photo of that alley that showed the white truck, it looked like it was already nighttime. So if this shooting happened at 3:18, I have it happening at 3:18, and this photo's at nighttime, then that's how many hours later did they take this photo, Chili cheese fry sounds good right now. Dusty Cole. Dusty Cole is in the house. Word on the Street TV. Ah, that's an interesting name for a channel. Word on the Street TV. Where do you get where do you get the information once the trial's over? You got to get it from the courthouse. You got to get it from the records. You got to get it from there's a Stanley Mosque courthouse. You can get it from Stanley Mosque. You can get it from the archives. I'm not sure how I'm going to get it, but I'll get it and share it with everybody. None your biz, Alex the Gold. Can't speak for all, but I really appreciate you and all the work you've put in. You're a cut above the rest. Salute from Baltimore. Be more. Long live Nipsey Hussle. Be more. Why would that inconsistency matter? Trust me, there are conspiracy theorists out there that will exploit that inconsistency for whatever reason. They're out there doing it. So I didn't put that in. I'm not sure if I actually talked about that when I did the Bernita Nicholson synopsis. I'm not even sure if she said red and they corrected it white. I may have said it, but I didn't think it was all that big of an issue. Do you think the driver will give an interview? I was going to ask the driver to give an interview. You talking about Bernita? I saw her coming out of court, but then she immediately got swarmed by a couple of police officers and they escorted her out. So I never got to have a conversation with her, but I was going to ask her if she'd be willing to tell her story. And if she's tapping in with Street TV, hey, Bernita, I would love to tell your story. And I'd love to do an interview about, your whole ordeal in this situation. So if she's listening, please tap in. But yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk to her in court. And I would love to tell her story. Caleb Production, do you think it was premeditated? It's difficult to When you ask, do you think it's premeditated? You're asking, is there any space for manslaughter? And if there is, how much space is there? And I think you could definitely argue premeditated, because in the state of California, do you know that you only need a matter of seconds? A matter of seconds for premeditation to be defined in the state of California. So, with such a strict definition, I think most people will be leaning toward premeditation. But I think we all believe, even both sides, the prosecution and the defense, they all believe that Eric Holder had no intention of killing Nipsey when he came up there that day. When he came up there that day, he had no intention of killing Nipsey Hussle. And I think going to the Master Burger, ordering food is indicative of that. I think when he walked up to the group the first time, he shook everybody's hand, including Nipsey. And if you just jumped in the chat, I talked about this earlier, came out on when Cowboy testified that Eric Holder shook everybody's hand when he came there the first time, and he shook Nipsey's hand. But then after that conversation and after that tension that Bernita talks about, when he leaves, he shakes Cowboy's hand and he shakes Renpaw's hand. He does not shake Nipsey's hand when he leaves. So I think there's enough evidence to support that was never his intention. But is making that decision right there on the spot enough for first degree? In most instances in the state of California, it is, but I have seen some exceptions. If this room gets up to 2,000 people, I'll stay in here for 2 hours. I'll do a 2-hour video if this gets up to 2,000 people. I'm surprised it's at 1,600. Got to get my YouTube started so I can get paid. Oh God. Hey, YouTube doesn't really pay as much as people think they do, you know. Hey, when I've been on YouTube so long that when I was posting videos, there was no such thing as monetization. You were just posting it to just boost your channel. You were just growing your channel. That monetization came later. Ace of Spades says premeditated. Hey, I'm not going to argue with you. If you believe it's premeditated, I can't debate you on that. We appreciate you, Alex. Been watching you for so long. Evil Earth Ego, I appreciate it. Joe Cobos, you shouldn't be surprised at the amount of people. This has been a good live stream. Well, I've been doing these live streams every day. Actually, yesterday we had about 1,500 in here. So, and of course, there's huge public interest in this case. And I don't think most of the media that's in there, they're going to write an article and they're going to give you a condensed version of what happened. And they only have so much space and so many characters to use. Whereas I'm the only independent media in there. Final Call, I would say Final Call was. I don't think Final Call is independent because she got the support of the Nation of Islam. Every media in there has the support of another authority above them. I'm the only media in there. I have no one supports me. So I can do however I want to do it. I could present this information however I want to present it. I could read you all my notes for an hour to give you more information, whereas these other media outlets, they're restricted to how they're going to serve up the information based on their bosses, based on their editors, things of that sort. And I have no editor. Actually, I'm the only person in that courtroom from the media that has no editor. There's no editor that's going to check my work. You guys are the editors. You guys check my work. When is it going to be done? Asks who's asking that? Neighborhood All-Star. When is this case going to be done? I'll give you a quick rundown of what I expect to see. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. is going to be jury instructions. That should last about 1 hour. 10 a.m., let's say 10:15 to 10:30, John McKinney will start doing his closing statements. The prosecutor will start doing his closing statements. I anticipate that John McKinney is going to be up there for 2 hours. So if he starts at 10:30, that means he's going to go into the lunch hour, and he's going to continue at 1:30, maybe be done by 2. The defense, Aaron Jansen, I'm going to give him a 2-hour window as well to give his closing statement. So let's say he goes to from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., and that'll be the end of the day. And then whatever the next day is, whether that's going to be Friday, because we're normally closed on Fridays, or Monday, then the jury will start deliberating. So I believe this whole trial with the closing arguments will be done tomorrow afternoon. He had 2 straps. Yeah. Do you think he can get the death penalty from using 2 guns? No, the death penalty is not on the table in this case. You can't get the death penalty after the fact. That has to be filed from the beginning of this case. And the district attorney's office did not seek the death penalty in this case. It's because my capture card isn't allowing it. I'm not using a capture card. I have my camera going right into the laptop. So when you say capture card, what do you mean by that? Is it my laptop restricting it? Because I have my camera shoots in 4K. So I don't know why I'm not able to deliver this in at least 1080. So it could be my laptop, Max Millie. It could be my laptop. None your biz. I appreciate that. Eric was jealous of Nip, and he was probably looking for a reason to get the chance to do that to him. Well, I disagree with that, because when he first got there, he was cool with Nip. The beginning, when he first got there, everything was cool. It was when he left, it wasn't cool. And we got testimony about how he shook everybody's hand in the beginning, but after that conversation, he didn't shake hands. He got his food from Master Burger, went back to the group, and only shook Cowboy and Rimpaw's hand. So definitely something was going on there. And I could understand Cowboy's reluctant to really tell us everything, you know. And Cowboy testified today that no one used the word snitch. He said that Nipsey never said snitch, and he even said that Eric Holder never used the word snitch. So I don't know. Why was Bernita Nicholson the real Bonita Applebaum? You got to put me on. Bum, 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 bum. 1989, Tribe Called Quest, if I remember correctly. Is there footage of police interrogation with Eric? No, there isn't. We have footage of the long interrogation with Bernita Nicholson, and that's going to be interesting. We're going to get that. We're going to get that. And that's and in that interrogation, she says she heard them talking about snitching. She heard it. Do you think any victim statements will be submitted by Nipsey's family? I don't think so. I don't think any victim statements will be submitted. Did Eric get caught with both weapons? No, they tried to get the weapons. Detective Cedric Washington testified that they served a search warrant at Harold's. This is the only guy in the whole trial that doesn't have a last name. His last name has not been divulged. And I forgot to ask today, who the heck is Harold? Who is this dude? Harold has no last name. This whole trial has just been Harold. We went to Harold's house. Harold has a studio. So they served a search warrant at Harold's place, and they searched a search warrant where Eric lived, and they didn't find any weapons. Hey, I think this is from Real Talk by Jen B. Jen B. Sounds like a woman. That sounds like a girl's name, but it says here, I'm not being negative, but please let this be a cautionary tale. Mind your own business and don't tell anyone to get any paperwork straight. There it is right there. Machiavelli Mafia. Can it be assumed that Eric's rumored reputation is true? If Eric was a snitch, would that come up in the trial? Well, if Eric was a snitch, it doesn't really matter if he's a snitch or not a snitch. This trial is not about if Eric Holder was a snitch or not. And if he was a snitch and they knew he was, if the prosecution knew, I don't even know if a judge would allow that in. The judge is going to be like, okay, what's the purpose of presenting this? So I don't know. I can't answer that because there's so many pretrial hearings where they decide what evidence is going to be presented. And that would be a good question after this trial is over. That's definitely a question I would ask the prosecutor and defense if any paperwork about any of his cases came up. Oh man, there's somebody that's spamming this room. I can't. Let me see if I can. I want to remove them. Let me remove them. Hide user on this channel. All right, I just hid that user. Love chat XYZ. They're putting porno links and stuff like that in here. All right, sorry about that, people. Who the Puerto Rican? You think Holder will be killed in prison? That's a tough question. It's a possibility, It does matter if Eric Holder's a snitch, informant, or agent. It really doesn't matter in terms of whether or not he's guilty of killing it, because even if he is a snitch, it don't excuse it in the court's eyes. So I'm not really sure if it matters for the trial. The paperwork is a big part of the case. Alex, what part of the Bronx are you originally from? I'll come back to talking about why I don't think it's important for the trial. What part of the Bronx are you originally from before moving to the West Coast? I was actually born on 161st Street in the McKinley Projects, right off of Trinity. That was my first address. Let me see if I can even remember the address. Trying to remember the address. Oh, it's slipping my head right now. Slipping my head. Something like 140 East 161st Street. 720. I believe my first address was 720 East 161st Street. Actually, there's a picture of me on Instagram. Go to my Instagram channel, Alex Alonso 101, and there's a photo of me standing in front of the building, and you can see the address in the back. So that will be the first address I ever had. I didn't spend a whole lot of time there. I spent more time on the Grand Concourse between 170th and 171st. That's where my grandmother lived. My grandfather lived in Parkchester on Metropolitan Avenue. And then I had my own place. I had a duplex on Clinton Avenue by Crotona Park. So, you know, even though I grew up in Los Angeles and spent a majority of my life here in LA, I maintain ties in the New York area. Did Eric look beat up in court? Asks Scanley Money. Well, he came in with a COVID mask, and his COVID mask, it was like this. And I noticed his left eye was kind of swollen a little bit, and he had staples on the back of his head. And he didn't look that bad, but you couldn't really see all the injuries because of the mask. Will you cover Dolph's trial? Well, Dolph's trial is going to be in Georgia. I might cover it and listen, do some analysis on the Streets and Scholars podcast. And Streets and Scholars podcast episode 20 drops after midnight. So we talk about this trial, me and FG. We talked about it on episode 19. We talk about it in episode 20. So I want to make sure you guys tap in the Streets and Scholars podcast on any podcast platform: Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeart. If you listen to podcasts, type in which app you listen to podcasts on. If you're a podcast listener, if you're a fan of podcasts, type in how you listen to your podcasts. I just want to get a sense of what program people use. Spotify. Did Rimpaw ever speak to the police? If so, did the police share what was said? Actually, Detective Cedric Washington said back in 2019 he spoke to Rimpaw a couple times, and he recorded that interview. But that interview was not introduced as a exhibit, so it wasn't played, and we don't know what was said. But that's according to Detective Cedric Washington. Do you think all right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wrap this live up, and then maybe I'll come back on and do another one. It's been an hour and 30 minutes. I got a whole lot to do. I appreciate everybody that's in the chat, whether you super chatted or not. I just appreciate everybody tapping in that wants to get all this information about the case, about the trial. And I'll try to tap in a little bit later. I want to get a few things done here. Pragmatic that don't leave. I know, man, it's crazy. There's 1,500 people in here, and I gotta take care of some things. I got a podcast to upload. I got some other stuff I got to do. Maurice, I appreciate you. Apple. Oh, you listen to Apple. Okay. What's the name of the podcast? The name of the podcast is Streets and Scholars. Go listen to episode 19 right now. Episode 20 will be dropping in a few hours. And we talk about this case. We talk about this trial with FG from Cross Atlantic Pyru. And on that note, I'm going to tap out, but I'll be sure to tap in real soon. Thanks for checking out Street TV.